All right, so good day to everyone. Today we'll be discussing about methodology. If you are already on your chapter 3, then therefore basically you are now writing with your methodology. So it is important that we will be able to understand what methodology is all about, and that's what we're going to talk about. So I think the intention of this lesson is to make this chapter 3 easier for you. All right. So let's, without any further ado, let's proceed with our discussion. So methodology is the specific procedure or techniques used to identify, select, process, and analyze information about a topic. So in a research paper, the methodology section allows the reader to critically evaluate a study's overall validity and reliability. So now again, this topic is actually what do you call this one? Helping you out to identify what else, select, process, meaning what are the methods that you use to your study? What are the techniques that you will be going to use in your study? So that's what we're going to talk about. And the importance also of the validity and reliability throughout your study. And that's where we can determine in methodology. Okay, so let's proceed. So we have the guidelines in writing a methodology. So the methodology contains details of everything you did in the study to answer your research question. So this section is relatively the easiest to write among other components of the research paper. Can you hear that? This is the most easier or easiest one, all right, in all sections of your research paper or articles, as you just have to mention the stepwise procedure. So the parameters, your experiment, the names, the name and the version of software, an instrument you use, including the model and the manufacturer's name. All right. So you have to remember that is a specific, I think I have put it, a specific set of procedure is usually followed to ensure the systematic approach. Let me try that. Hold on. Ayan. So this is, again, can I repeat that? All you have to remember, class, that a specific set of procedure is usually followed to ensure that the systematic approach is adopted in every undertaking. So I don't understand why other having a hard time of writing their own methodology, where in fact this is the most easiest easiest to write in all in all sections of your research paper. So methodology section accounts for the detailed chronology undertaken to address the scientific problem. So chronology, oops, I am next, wait lang. Ayan. So let's talk about how to write a research methodology. Let's begin by introducing your overall approach to your research. So we have here is step 1. So in step 1 class, you have to explain your methodological approach. You have to explain the reason. You have to explain what did you use, your approach. So methodological approach ang tawag natin dyan. And secondly, I mean, what are the example did you aim on this? So hold on. So what research problem or question did you investigate? So that's the question there. For example, did you aim to systematically describe the characteristic of something, to explore or under research topic, or to establish a cause and effect relationship? And what type of data did you need to achieve this aim? I think you have to consider these types of questions for you to be able to understand what you need to do, what are the methods that you're going to use, and what are the techniques and approaches that you are putting in there. Okay. So did you need the quantitative data expressed in numbers or qualitative data expressed in words? And secondly, did you need to collect primary data yourself, or did you use secondary data that was collected by someone else? Or third, did you gather experimental data by controlling and manipulating variables, or descriptive data by gathering observations without intervening? So have you noticed, class, we will be tackling two designs here, from quali and quantitative design. So see how important that you know what types of research design that you will be going to use, so that you can able to come up with with the technique and methods that you will be going to use appropriate to your study. All right. So I hope you see the three bullets in there. And now, depending on your discipline and approach, you might also begin with a discussion of the rationale and assumptions underpinning your methodology. So consider this kind of question: why is this the most suitable approach in answering a research question? Secondly, is this a standard methodology in your field, or does it require justification? And thirdly, what are the criteria for validity and reliability in this type of research? So again, you will be come up on your own with what method that you are going to use. No, so the technique there is you have to go back to the review related literature that you have, so that you can be able to understand what you are working on, right? Because as, just like what I said, since you are filling the gap, or you are making a bridge in order to connect the previous one to your own study, somehow you will see there the methods that they use, and now it's time for you to assess or to filter if it's still necessary to do so, or if not, then you have to come up with a different one, so that you will be able to address the concern of that particular study. So let's talk about quantitative research, class. In a quantitative experimental study, you might aim to proceed to produce generalizable knowledge about the cause of a phenomenon. So valid research requires a carefully designed study under controlled conditions that can be replicated by other researchers. All right. So that's what we call the quantitative experimental. So in a qualitative ethnography, you might aim to produce contextual real-world knowledge about the behavior, social structures, and shared beliefs of specific group of people, as this methodology is less controlled and more interpretive. All right. So you will need to reflect on your position as a researcher, taking into account how your participations and perception might have influence. All right. So I think in this case, if you try to look at on this one, class, I think we have to remember that when we say qualitative ethnography, you might aim to what? Produce a contextual real world. So in other words, what you are trying to interpret here is based on the words. So the sets of questionnaire or the survey questions that you put into your study is different from the quantitative data, right? And since we are going to understand each behavior, characteristic, qualities, or anything that could associated with your study, so that we can get whatever study that we want to get from that. So all we have to do is to make sure that you design or you come up with techniques that will easily for you to interpret the data that you have, and at the same time you will come up also with what method are you going to use, di ba? Or anong pwede nating matawag dyan na instrument na gagamitin natin. Are you referring with the survey questions, or maybe you want to conduct an interview or observation? It's all up to you. All right. So step two, class, you have to describe your methods of data collection. What does it mean? You have to describe your methods, meaning what methods did you use in order to collect the data? Is that through observation? Is through survey questions? What else? Phone interview? So everything that you may think of, as long as there is a way for you to how you gather and get that data. So you have to explain that in methodology. All right. So once you have introduced your overall methodological approach, you should give full details of your data collection method. So you have to explain as well how you operationalize concepts and measured your variables, your sampling method or inclusion, exclusion criteria, and any tools, procedure, and materials you used to gather data. So we do have this here. It can be a survey, it can be an experiment, or it can be an existing data. So things like that. All right. So some other might probably use the secondary sources where they get from the review related literature and so on. That's totally fine. Okay. Next, we have the quantitative methods example here. So the quantitative example methods class, the survey consisted of 5 multiple choice questions and 10 questions that were measured on a 7-point Likert scale. All right, 7-point Likert scale. So the aim was to conduct the survey with 350 customers of Company X on the company premises in the hub from 4 to 8 on July 2017 between 11 and I think 3 p.m. So a customer was defined as a person who had purchased a product from company X on the day of questioning. So participants were given 5 minutes to fill the survey anonymously, and we do have the 408 customers responded. Because not all survey were fully completed, 371 results were included in the analysis. You get the point? So, all right. So can we just repeat that? Let me just check this one because I want to make sure if it's all right. So in quantitative method test, this is a methodology that methodology explanation from, I mean, from quantitative to qualitative research. So we are trying to justify the best way possible in order for you to understand in the easiest way of what you put it into your quantitative data. So for example, the quantitative methods example that they use here, for example, like they have a survey consisted of 5 multiple choice. So they have 5 questions. And in that particular questions, you have to measure it in using the Likert scale, all right? So the intention of the study was to conduct the survey with 350 customers, right? That 350 customers. Now in a quantitative, you also put it in there the sample size kasi. The sample size. And that's the reason why you have to explain this way. Okay, you have to explain this way of what is your target population and what happened in that particular population. So give me that number. Since we're talking about the quantitative methods, it should be done properly. And it should be what? Explained by the methods and techniques that you use from gathering data up to interpreting your data and so on. So now, since we have the 350 customer from the company X on the company premises, that was started from 4 to 8 of July 2017 around, can I just give a time like 11 in the morning to 3 p.m. So a customer was defined as a person who had purchased a product from company X on the day of questioning. So on that particular day, participants were given 5 minutes only to fill in the survey anonymously. And surprisingly, we do have the 408 customers responded. So our aim is just to conduct a 350, but now we will have the 408 customers responded. So since we have the 408 customers responded, can you please tell me how many, it still depends on how many sample population that you want to get from your from your respondents, no? So because not all surveys were fully completed, no, 371 survey results were included in the analysis. So 408 tapos yung iba hindi naman natapos. Oh, so meron tayong 371 survey results. So kailangan lang natin 350. Ang objective natin is we wanted to get a 350 survey. However, we get the 371 survey results were included in the analysis. So what were we going to do in there? What next? Of course, you have to compute. And you have to get those 350. In order to gain a better insight into the possibilities for improvement of the product, range a semi-structured interview. So the one that we mentioned earlier, the quantitative data, is a structure. Semi-structured interviews were conducted with 8 turning customers. Oh, by the way, let's going back in here to avoid confusion, because in the last part I just said that you have to get the 350. Do you still remember the computation that I just did in order to get the sample size that you needed? To justify, well, I mean, the respondents that you need in your study. So you have to follow that. All right, you have to follow the one that I just gave you. So you all you have to do is you have to go back to the Google Classroom where I posted the procedure, and we already talked about it last time, right? So I know that every one of you are aware of how to do it. Well, if you still not, and we will have a separation discussion for that, because it's just only a justification of quantitative method examples, showing that kind of examples, but understanding and analyzing what needs to be put, or what sample population is somehow a little bit complicated to explain in all at once. No? So we have the qualitative method example here. In order to gain a better insight into the possibilities for improvement of the range, product range, I mean, semi-structured interviews were conducted with 8 returning customers from the main target group of a company X. A returning customer was defined as someone what? Someone who usually bought products at least twice a week from a company X. Now, the survey were used to solve the participants who belong to the target group, aging 20 to 45 years old. Interviews were conducted into a small office next to the cash register and lasted approximately 20 minutes each. Answers were recorded by non-taking, and 7 interviews were also filmed with consent. One interviewee preferred not. So can you imagine the function of the methodology on how they explain the sample populations that you have and what they did, and how they explain in this qualitative method associated or under with methodology. So don't worry, class, I'll give you an example of how to do it in your research section paper. And I'll give you a separate example, this one, tomorrow maybe, once we already have, or once we meet again, all right? So for now, let's just consider the qualitative method example that we have in here. Now, in step 3, what you need to do is to describe your methods of analysis. So how are you going to do that? Since we're saying that you have to describe the methods of analysis, there's a time that understanding the data that you gather, right? So you should indicate how you process and analyze the data. Avoid going into too much detail. You should not start presenting or discussing any of your result at this stage, not yet. So step 4, because you do have the findings pa, di ba? So nasa chapter 3 pa lang tayo, is just explaining the methods and the techniques that you use. But other than that, whatever be the findings or interpretations done in your research, this is not the right time for you to include or to explain what you find out, or whatever you find out in your study. Okay. So next we have, did I read this one? Oh yeah. So step 4, evaluate and justify your methodological choices. Methodological choices. Yeah. So our methodology should make the case for why you choose a particular method. So especially if you did not take the most standard approach to your topic. So you have to discuss why other methods were not suitable for your objectives, and show how this approach contributes new knowledge or understanding. So you can acknowledge limitation or weaknesses in the approach. Sorry about the typographical error here. So it's supposed to be, that's YOU. You po iyan. So we have to acknowledge the limitation or weaknesses in the approach you choose, but justify why these were outweighed by the strengths. So lab-based experiments can always accurately simulate real-life situations and behaviors, but they are effective for testing causal relationship between variables. So you have to consider as well, class, that we have a different types of research kasi. Sometimes you are, it depends on the strand. Usually the STEM also doing their experimental research. So basically they're looking for the cause and effect or something like that. Lab-based experiment can always accurately simulate real-life situations, behaviors, but they're effective for testing causal relationship between variables. So we do often structured interview usually produce results that cannot be generalized beyond the sample group, but they provide a more in-depth understanding of participants' perceptions, motivations, and emotions. All right. So I think this is very important. When we use a qualitative data, it's pretty obvious that they're giving a chance of understanding the individuality regarding with their perceptions, emotions towards a certain topic. All right. So you will understand that once you already conducting your own research. All right. Oops. Come on. So for this one class, writing a methodology is similar to writing instruction for cooking a dish, a recipe. So it is essential that all ingredients, including the amount of it, the manner by which the ingredients are cut, prepared, and the duration for cooking are specified and written accurately and in detail. So can you imagine reading the recipe, right? The recipe from or any instructions rather. If you buy something like a tomato sauce, they will see you will see an instruction at the back maybe regarding to a food that they offer with this tomato sauce applicable to put in na pwede natin ilagay dyan. So meron tayong mga ganyang easiest example para maintindihan natin na naipapakita natin ang bawat ingredients na kailangan mo. So certain variables also explain to that. And the method, most especially the procedure. Reproducibility is made possible with a complete and easy to follow and well-written methodology. So consequently, confirmation as the veracity of your experimental result is successfully attained, all right? So you have to remember that. No? Reproducibility is made possible with complete, easy to follow, and well-written methodology. So having said that, we could since you have this kind of procedure already, remember that when you conduct a research, it's more on trial and error. But the good thing about it is, despite of how many times you try, you keep on trying until you get the right formula or you got the right results. But of course, along associated with the right guidelines and objectives that you have. Okay. So remember that flowcharts, schematic diagram, and other visual elements facilitate better understanding of the methodology and the whole experimental process. So writing the result discussion section. So for the result and discussion, results and discussion, I think we will be talking about it separately, maybe tomorrow after we tomorrow. And don't forget that we will be also having a recitation if you really watch this video. All right. So I think that's it for now. Thank you so much for watching the methodology. And don't worry, I'll give you an example, ample example tomorrow. All right. So goodbye and thank you for now.